Do you ever feel like you can never get everything done and that your work is really driving you nuts compared to the amount of time that you have to do it? Well, today I have an incredible guest. He's a business coach and he's an amazing, everybody in the entire Inland Empire knows that Craig Korotko is the guy to turn to for help when it comes to time management. Craig, great to have you on the show.
Good morning, Randy, and congratulations on your YouTube channel.
Well, thank you so much.
That's going well, yeah.
All right. Yeah, so Craig, you've been a coach now for a number of years, and before that, you were in the C-suite of Fortune 500 insurance companies, and you've been a time manager guy for a very long time. What is it about you, do you think, that causes you to be so interested in time management?
Well, part of that stint in the C-suite was running and managing an IT department as chief information officer. And part of my training in that position was actually Six Sigma, where you actually do a lot of time studies, a lot of studies on how to make processes more efficient. And so it's just become kind of ingrained and natural for me to look at processes in that way. And I'm amazed that working with small business owners, their typical complaint, almost over 90% of their complaints are, I don't have enough time to do that. I'm sure you've heard that yourself.
Absolutely.
So when you look at that, you wonder, well, what is it that they're doing? And it's also a passion of mine to show business owners how to work on their business, not stuck in it. A lot of times the business owners simply get stuck in their business and they don't know what they don't know. So they have no way of even looking at, well, how do I make an improvement? And
Right.
and it's quite amazing that some of the things that we teach are so fundamental and so basic. But again, it's just business owners are so focused on their trade, their skill, their service, that they forget to look at their business or on their business. So
Right. Taking that 5 mile high or with the 60,000 foot view of the business is something rare for small business owners to do. And I think that's a big part of what you do with your coaching is help them to get an outsider's perspective on what their processes and procedures issues are, what time management issues they're facing, and help them to focus more on the things that matter rather than the things that don't.
no, absolutely. And some of the very first fundamental steps is clarity. They have to have an understanding as to how are they spending their time today before they can even look to how do I manage it, or how do I find more time? How do I?
That's the old budgeting thing, right? I mean, I've taught informally. I've taught my kids. I've taught several of my friends about how to budget. And the very first thing they always say to do when you're going to budget something is you're going to count every single penny, literally every single day, and where you spent it. And at the end of the month, you go, "Oh my gosh, I didn't know I was spending $90 on Starbucks."
And that's the exact same thing with time management. So it's not sexy. In fact, it can be painful, just like you're budgeting and tracking every penny. You need to track how are you spending every minute of your day, and it's oftentimes the results though are quite surprising. So it's
and then of course, as a consultant and you as a coach, what we find is that sometimes our clients get it, they figure it out, they're like, yeah, that's exactly right, but then sometimes they don't want to move forward, and I think that you have a humorous representation of that for us today.
and I do. There's hundreds, if not thousands, of books written on time management. And one of the easiest and simplest books to read is one written by Brian Tracy, where he talks about Eat That Frog. And it's based on a quote from Mark Twain that says that if you eat a live frog every morning and nothing worse will happen to you the rest of the day. Well, to convert that into how does that help me in time management, it's simply a way to also view how to organize your tasks and your jobs. And so if you do the most critical and most important job first, then everything else that happens after that is just kind of time filler. Now, of course, you never want to tell your kids that, because my son took this quite literally, and he said, well, if I eat that frog, it's going to help me. But anyways.
So this would be one element or one part of time management is doing that hardest thing first in the morning. So I know for me, for years and years and years and years, maybe most of my career, the thing that I did first in the morning was the things that were the easiest, that were all reactions to things. There were nothing proactive in the early morning. Just jump in and answer phone calls, answer emails, take everything that I could that was incoming to me that I could quickly and easily answer.
And the human nature, it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. You're doing a lot of tasks and you feel like you're doing a lot of work, but by the end of the day, you look at, well, how did that help me generate more revenue, or how did that help me reduce my expenses? And you say you really didn't do the difficult things, the hard things, because you filled your day. Yeah, we have a member in our mastermind group that calls it whirlwinding or firefighting, and you feel like you've accomplished a lot of things, but you don't get the important tasks done, and so it ends up becoming a form of procrastination. And you need to do these things, but I'm so busy doing these other things that, and there you go again, you run out of time in the day.
All right, so the first step is you need to find out what you're doing now. So that's this first step of budgeting. So you recommend people journal their actual days, like in 15-minute increments, or how does that work?
Exactly, 15 to 30-minute increments, depending on some people are very, let's say, anal and easily adapt to that, so they'll do 15 minutes. Others, it's like poking your eye with ice picks, and so it's difficult for them to do that. So we'll say at least do 30-minute increments, and just keep a journal next to your computer so that as you're doing things, and I want them to jot down everything, because it's like, you start the day off and you're reading emails, and then you get that firefighting phone call, jot that down. What do you do after that? And so by journaling your time, it's quite interesting to see what bubbles up to the surface. And I haven't done this one time where people at the end of the exercise, I asked them to do 1 or 2 weeks. And they're always surprised to say, oh my gosh, I found 2 hours, I found 3 hours. We had one member who came back, he was working 15 hours a day, exhausted, had no time for anything. He journaled his time. He found 5 hours in a day where he was just getting sidetracked on researching what he found interesting or amusing, but had nothing to do with the projects he was working on.
Right. So he wasn't really working 15 hours a day. He was working 9 hours a day.
Exactly right.
Rabbit holes for 6 hours a day.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly.
And believe me, there's a lot of people in America today, not only business owners, but business employees who are wasting massive amount of time on games and rabbit holes and all kinds of things because of the screen that's in front of them.
Yep, and some companies now are locking down access to social media because, as you say, you may be researching something, but then you go down a rabbit hole and you find a nice little cat video that you find amusing or what have you, and by the end of the day, you've lost half of it, doing nothing productive. But you sure feel busy.
Yeah, you feel busy. You feel great, right? So okay. So now if we find out that we're wasting this amount of time, or we at least get clarity, as you point out, as to what we are spending our time on, how then can we begin the process of straightening ourselves out? What's the next step?
Well, the next critical function that I need business owners to be aware of is that nobody can multitask. Now, everybody thinks that they're great multitaskers, and what you're really doing is it's impossible to do more than one thing at a time. Even a computer can't do more than one thing at a time. It just does it really, really fast. But as a person, you're not multitasking, you're switch tasking. You're switching from one thing to another. So if you're working on something and then you're interrupted and you switch to another task, what you've done is you've interrupted your thought and your process, and eventually you have to come back. Now, sometimes you get interrupted and you never come back to what you've been working on. And so what happens? You kick that can down the road and you're doing it next day. So you have to understand that multitasking is probably the biggest lie in the world. And once you understand that it's when you're switch tasking, think about it. You're working on even composing a letter or an email, and halfway through you're interrupted and you switch to something else. The computer dings an alarm, an alert, and you switch over to it, and you come back. Well, you don't come back and pick up the pen and start your thought flow right from where you started. You have to go back, reconstruct that thought, and so it's very inefficient. You lose a lot of time switching back and forth. So the next thing we need to do is, if you have that understanding, you have to then understand that when we're about to schedule time, you have to block certain things out, so that when you're working on a task, turn off your alerts. Nothing is so urgent unless you're working in an IT environment where somebody's computer systems went down and their business halts. Well, that's pretty urgent. But I can't think of a lot of other things that can't wait for a 30-minute time block to call them back or respond to the alert. So if you can understand and learn how to manage your time, manage your tasks, you'll find that uninterrupted time, you can get more done in an hour than all the interruptions throughout a day. And so once you start becoming more efficient, and human nature, we're so used to just jumping to those alerts. And by the way, it's an alert. That's what you're supposed to do.
Yeah. So I know I've heard you talk about this before. This matter of time blocking. So if we're going to spend time on tasking, 15 minutes or half an hour or an hour where we're doing one task, we've turned off the phone, we've turned off the alerts or whatever. How do we decide how to do the blocking? How do we decide how much time to spend on one task versus another task?
Well, and that then becomes really a matter of personal preference. There's no science that says you do this in the morning, you do this in the afternoon. Some people are more efficient in making phone calls first thing in the morning. Some people find it more efficient in the day. So that's when it comes time to do a little coaching with the individual to say, let's now block your time so it's most efficient, highest and best use of your time. Now, going back to our frog analogy, you do want to start the day, or at least early in the day, to start doing your larger tasks that are going to take more time. And then you start blocking based on what you feel comfortable with. A lot of times people, are so in tune to those alerts and say, well, I can't take my eye off email for more than 30 minutes. Okay, start with 30 minutes. And when you start to see you get so much done in 30 minutes, and you say, well, maybe I can expand it to an hour. But the time blocking really is determined based on individual use of time. So
would one way of thinking about it, though, be that getting some more clarity on the priorities of your actual position? If you're an owner, you don't have anybody telling you what those priorities are unless you have a coach or somebody that can help you with those priorities. But if you don't have a coach, and I highly recommend Craig as a coach, but if you don't have a coach, then you would at least want to get some idea. I want to spend this much time selling, or I want to spend this much time doing collections, if that's something that you need to do, or I need to spend this much time creating new products, or I need to spend this much time with clients, or this much time prospecting, because we always know that's a balancing issue.
Sure.
Prospecting versus work on the client. So we should at least have some idea of the priorities of this time, so that we can do the time blocking, right?
Well, and again, it comes back down to the individual, meaning where are their highest skills, and what is going to be the highest and best use of those skills. A lot of time people will, let's say, toil over accounting and bookkeeping. Well, if it's something that you don't like to do and something that you don't do very well, and it ends up eating up a lot of your time, another part of time management is learning how to delegate and assigning those tasks as well. So as you went through that whole list of things, it's hard to imagine one person having the expertise to do everything that you went through, as far as lead generation and closing and selling and onboarding. And now you've got the other aspects of your business, as far as accounting and bookkeeping and taxes and social media. And so another great part of time management is, what are you good at? And if you're not good at it, and you don't want to learn how to be good at it, then find somebody who is, or delegate it and to somebody else, which then now frees up all that time.
And delegation used to meant within your organization. I mean, I think back 10 or 15 years ago, if I was going to delegate a task, I had 5 or 6 people in the office that I could delegate it to, or I might delegate it to somebody in the factory, but there was people around me that I could say, no, I don't want to do this, or I'm not good at it, I'll delegate it, or I'll just hire another person. But in today's environment, we have a couple of new toys to play with.
Absolutely.
which I guess we've always had the outsourcing to a professional. So you could outsource to a outside bookkeeper, or outsource to an outside HR company, or like ADP, or some of these Paychecks, or somebody you could outsource to those kind of folks. But today we even have this micro outsourcing, or this
the gig economy.
Gig economy, gig work overseas, virtual assistants and stuff. So even a solopreneur like me, I've got about 12 people around the world working for me every single day that I'm paying $5 or $6 an hour to, doing those tasks that I don't want to do.
And that's a great point, because a lot of times people don't delegate because in their mind they can't justify hiring another employee. I don't have enough work for them to do. But that's where, again, they don't know what they don't know. A lot of people aren't aware of the gig work and the different ways of sending out virtual assistants. Once they learn, then they can start feeling more comfortable in assigning that work out, so that people can, so they can free up their time to do the things that they need to do.
Exactly right. So, Craig, if there was, we talked about determining what you are spending your time on. We've talked about blocking your time, where you're blocking out everything else while you're concentrating on a task. We've talked about delegating. If there was one more thing in time management that you would consider to be kind of a big deal, what would that be?
Well, and then you're getting into the next piece of it, where, as we keep drilling down, now we're getting into prioritization of tasks, and the to-do lists. You have to write things down. If you can't get up in the morning and say, well, I think I'm going to do this, this, and this, and at the end of the day, you don't know whether you've achieved those or not. So creating those to-do lists, and then learning how to prioritize them based on the greatest impact, and then working toward goals. So if you don't have goals, it's hard to create those tasks. And so, as we keep drilling into this process, we just move into other key processes that need to be adapted or brought into the company. And of course, goal setting is the next phase.
Yeah. So if you want to actually determine what it is you should be doing as the owner and what you shouldn't be doing as the owner, then knowing what the goals are, knowing what the strategy is to achieve those goals, and then breaking it down by month and even by day, all of a sudden, obviously, it becomes a lot easier to determine how to structure your day. And then from time immemorial, I'm the guy who does make lists. And I love scratching out the things on the list.
Oh yeah, it's a sense of accomplishment.
The best part of my day is scratching something out on the list. So, but there's a bunch of different techniques for making lists. Some people talk about Sunday night. You make your list for the next week because you've had a chance to kind of relax your brain, and the items are going to percolate more up to your brain to be able to make that list. Some people talk about they make it first thing in the morning. Other people make a list every day and they transfer the previous day's list to a brand new list. I mean, there's all these different methods. So, Craig, in coaching, do you help people with those kinds of details of how they do their list making?
The greatest thing about a coach is that I'm not doing the work for them. I'm just trying to demonstrate and show them the values that take ownership. And so my greatest task is again bringing awareness and clarity as to why we want to do these things and the value, and then work with them on the accountability aspect of how are you doing on those things. So making the list, again, it's I could create a list for them, but they have no ownership and no sense of responsibility for it. So a lot of times they don't do it. But if we teach them again, to teach a man how to fish instead of giving them a fish. We teach them how to set their goals and how to make them smart goals. And we teach them how to then, as you say, break it down to the tasks at hand and then prioritizing those tasks. They tend to take ownership and a sense of responsibility for it as well. And each person, as you said, there's a million ways to, I personally, I like creating my lists at the end of the day, because when I create the list, it stays in my subconscious. And then sometimes I actually wake up with what I need to do. If I wait till the morning, I'm groggy, I'm still half asleep, I don't know why. Then I already start procrastinating. I need a cup of coffee before I do that. But again, that's personal. So each person. So you work with the individual as to when is the best time of the day. When are you more in tune to doing it? So.
Fantastic, Craig. Well, listen, if you love this kind of content, if you got something out of today's meeting with Craig Korotko, why don't you push the like button? That'll tell us that you like this kind of content. We could do more. And then, and then we also have the opportunity to push the subscribe button and the notified button so that you can be made aware of future episodes. And what we're going to do tomorrow is we're going to have Craig back, and we're going to talk about one of the other things that Craig is well known in the Riverside and Inland Empire area for, and that is the idea of incremental improvement, where it may not be that you need to increase sales dramatically in order to increase your take-home pay. There may be a whole bunch of other incremental things that you could do to increase your take-home pay. Does that sound like it'd be interesting? Well, if it does, if that sounds interesting, come back tomorrow. This is Randy Kirk from Small Business Daily. We look forward to seeing you then.